Okay, what's up, peeps? What's happening out there? All right, not many viewers, but that's okay. I get the time right now. But shout out to everybody who's in the chat regardless. This is probably going to be a quick one, but we'll see how it goes. So yeah, the main thing I want to talk about here is Adam Azim's performance against Sergey Lipinets. Because Adam Azim is a fighter who I've been a little, I wouldn't say skeptical of. Maybe skeptical is the right way to describe it. But I've been cautious in declaring Adam Azim to be a future world champion, especially given the division that he's in at the moment. 140 pounds is very stacked. It's full of sharks. And also the way that his team, the McGuigans, have been moving him, which is very cautiously. Because, if you really feel like you've got something in someone special, yeah, you're not going to be reckless with him. But, for example, taking the Dalton Smith fight, I wouldn't have thought, right, if they really had a lot of confidence in Adam Azim, would have been seen as a step too far or too soon. Because based upon the eye test, and, the eye test can be deceiving, Azim looks more impressive than Dalton Smith, at least to me, okay? So, for, I want to say the past 18 months, I've been kind of skeptical of Adam Azim, but his last two performances have really impressed me. So let's talk about this particular performance against Sergey Lipinets. He stopped him in the 9th round, becoming only the second guy to ever stop Sergey Lipinets. And this guy's been in with some very good fighters. Obviously, Lipinets has seen better days, 35 years of age, a lot of miles on the clock, but nevertheless, he's still been mixing it in pretty good company of late. And as I say, nobody's stopping him, or nobody has stopped him since Boots Ennis several years ago. And that was quicker than Adam Azim managed to stop him. But bear in mind, that was at a higher weight. That was at 147. This fight was at 140. So let's talk about Adam Azim's performance here. I thought he was very composed. Now, some people might argue that because of the fact that there were numerous low blows from Adam Azim, and some people might say that those were deliberate low blows. Other people would argue that they were just accidental because of the fact that Lipinets was changing height, and therefore Azim, in order for the shots not to be low, would have had to adjust the trajectory of his shot while it was being thrown to avoid the shots landing low, if you know what I mean. If Lipinets is bobbing and weaving, once he comes up, a shot which maybe would have landed on the body when Lipinets was crouched, then hits him low when he rises up. So some people will make that argument as well. But no, I thought that Adam Azim did a very good job at outboxing Lipinets on the outside. He dropped him with a beautiful left hook. I think it was in the 3rd round. Lipinets was trying to apply pressure and get Adam Azim to throw more punches than he wanted to throw, and therefore take him into deep waters and drown him in the second half of the fight. That was obviously Lipinets' strategy. But Azim, to me, seemed to be boxing very comfortably. He was spinning off and away from the rope so as not to get pinned down. He was using his jab. Yeah, there was a bit of use of the extended left arm, which is illegal, but he kind of was flirting on the edge of having that called by the ref and, not having it called in the end. I don't think the referee actually called it, but yeah, when you extend your left arm out like that and hold it there, that's illegal. You're not allowed to do that. But he was doing it for such short periods, such a short amount of time, he just managed to get away with it. But yeah, for the most part, I thought he was very comfortable in there. He controlled things on the outside. The body shots, when they weren't low, were landing well. He was landing jabs through the middle, uppercuts, and the right uppercut in particular later on in the fight really came into play and did a lot of damage. The left hooks and what have you. So I thought he was boxing very well, very mature. And then he did something in this fight midway through that I saw him do in a previous fight. I forget who the opponent was. But once he sensed that Lipinets was weakening from the attack at long range, Azim actually then stepped in to engage Lipinets on the inside. And that, to me, was very impressive because, again, Adam Azim used his height, his reach, his speed, his skill, his movement, and his punching power on the outside. But rather than keep it on the outside, he was like, you know what? No, I'm going to take it to this guy now and take him out. And that's exactly what he did. He stepped up on the inside, shortened his punches. He said after the fight, this is something that he and Shane McGuigan have been working on for a long time. Stepped it up on the inside and was landing beautiful uppercuts on Sergey Lipinets. Yes, again, to reiterate, Azim did land multiple low blows in this fight and had 2 points deducted. It was good to see the referee wasn't afraid to deduct points from the house fighter, right, the A side. But nevertheless, Azim did damage with legitimate blows, shortened the shots on the inside, broke Lipinets down, and eventually in the 9th round, the referee called a halt to the bout. And I think it was a good stoppage. Lipinets didn't complain. Adam Azim did a very good job of breaking him down and breaking his heart, really. So I thought it was a mature performance. And I also want to talk about Adam Azim's defense in this fight, because Azim, growing up, was inspired by the likes of Prince Naseem, but also by Amir Khan. Now, stylistically, he's far more similar to Amir Khan than Prince Naseem. But he has, and look, Amir Khan went on to have a great career. Obviously, he suffered those setbacks early on in his career against Bradis Prescott. But then he came back from that and had some great wins at 140 pounds and then lost to Danny Garcia. We know the story of Amir Khan's career, right? So he had a great career, all in all. I'm not saying that Adam Azim will necessarily go on to achieve more than Khan or even as much as Khan, because it's a different landscape now. Okay, styles make fights. But what I can tell you is Azim appears to have better defensive instincts than Amir Khan ever had. When you see Azim in there against the Lipinets, he instinctively knows how to roll with the punches. I'm not saying he's a Floyd Mayweather defensively, but compared to Khan, one of the guys he looked up to growing up and was inspired by, Khan had a very stiff back, right? And he really didn't roll with punches well. Azim appears to do that naturally much better than Khan. If you compare them at the same stage of their careers, Azim appears to be more advanced in that particular area. I also think his footwork is a bit better. It remains to be, and he hasn't shown the vulnerability in terms of punch resistance that Khan showed. It remains to be seen, though, whether he's got the kind of heart, the stamina under pressure, the ability to drop very formidable opponents like Marcos Maidana. You know, when Khan dropped him in the first round, nearly had him out in the first round. It remains to be seen whether we'll see that kind of thing and that kind of success from Adam Azim as he moves up through the rankings. But so far, so good. And he's definitely starting to have me gain more confidence in him. Yeah, he's definitely starting to do that, because I'm seeing technical things in there, which I really, really like. And again, the mindset, the rolling with the shots, and when he's picked a guy apart on the outside, stepping to the guy and taking it to him on the inside as well. He didn't have to do that, of course, and it's not going to be advisable to do that against every opponent, obviously, right? But against Lipinets, it was clearly the right thing to do, and he got the guy out of there. Only the second guy, just to reiterate, to stop Sergey Lipinets. I thought it was a very good performance. I liked it. I thought it was entertaining. And, he spoke about Boots Ennis, Adam Azim, that is, prior to the fight. And he said he looks up to Boots Ennis and he would like to not just emulate Ennis, but actually surpass him one day, be better than him one day. And it remains to be seen whether he can do that. But becoming only the second man to stop Lipinets is obviously a step in the right direction. Now, after the fight, in the post-fight interview, he mentioned Dalton Smith. He kept talking about the fight needs to marinate a bit more. And he said when the fight does happen, Dalton Smith's in trouble. Well, we will see. Again, it's kind of curious that as impressive as Adam Azim looked here, and to me, he did look impressive. As impressive as he looked here, his team is still so cautious about that Dalton Smith fight. You know, is it just a money thing where they want it to be Adam Azim's first really big payday? Is that what it's about? Because where's Adam Azim really going to go from here other than fight the top names who are more proven than Dalton Smith anyway? So if we have a look at the junior welterweight rankings here, Adam Azim isn't actually ranked in the top 15 by any of the 4 major sanctioning bodies. I'm assuming because he's just fought for the IBO title, which presumably the other sanctioning bodies recognize as a sanctioning body too, and therefore they don't rank the other champions, right, as contenders in their rankings. So Adam Azim doesn't have a top 15 ranking with any of the major sanctioning bodies at 140 pounds. Dalton Smith does, as you can see. He's ranked number 13 with the IBF, number 2 with the WBC, and number 12 with the WBO. So he would probably be going the WBC route. You've got Sandor Martin, who's ranked number 1. These rankings are what are currently out there. They may be updated in the next couple of weeks and change and what have you. But Dalton Smith probably will be looking to go the WBC route right now. If you look at the champions, Richardson Hitchens, Jose Venezuela, Puello, Haney, obviously champion in recess, and Teofimo Lopez, would you pick Adam Azim to beat any of them right now? Or do you think he's not experienced enough? Maybe the play here by the McGuigans is to defend the IBO title, you know, because the IBO, I haven't actually seen their rankings. Maybe I'll do a separate video where we look through the IBO rankings. But I remember, for example, when Chris Eubank Jr. won the IBO, I think it was super middleweight title, when he beat that Australian guy, Reynold Quinlan. The IBO rankings at the time was shocking. Okay? Because like most other sanctioning bodies, the IBO, in order for you to get ranked, I mean, sometimes that, as far as I'm aware, they do rank people who haven't paid sanctioning fees, and they do rank people who haven't lobbied the IBO to get a ranking and so on. But they also, again, will rank you in exchange for, right? But at the time, the IBO top 10 was shocking, and Chris Eubank Jr. managed to become a champion. So is that the route that Adam Azim's handlers want him to go down for now while they bide their time and see how the championship landscape evolves and changes over the next, let's say, 12 months, and then strike when they think the time is right and have Adam Azim step in and fight one of the legitimate champions, you know, IBF, WBA, WBC, WBO. Maybe that's the route they're looking to go down, and therefore they don't think they need Dalton Smith right now. Or maybe they think after a couple of defenses of the IBO title, Dalton Smith can be one of them. Or maybe they're going to wait and see how Dalton Smith fares once he steps up. If he challenges for a world title, you know, will he win or will he be defeated? But it's kind of an interesting game that they're playing, because if Dalton Smith were to challenge for a world title and win, he might turn the tables on Adam Azim and say, you know what? You wouldn't fight me. Do you know what I mean? When I was mandatory for your, was it the European title? Yeah, you wouldn't fight me. You kept on coming up with excuses and this, that, and the other. So now that I'm in a position of power, now that I'm a champion, guess what? I want you to earn your title shot. I want you to fight your way up to mandatory position against these dangerous contenders, and then you get your title shot. Yeah, give you a taste of your own medicine. Will we see Dalton Smith do that? Obviously, it's contingent on Dalton Smith becoming a world champion, and that is not an easy thing to do at 140 pounds right now. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of danger men in the division. So anyway, let's throw it over to the chat room. See what you guys think about this. Shout out to everybody in the chat. And if you could just throw a like on the stream, people, it really helps with visibility. We've got 156 concurrent viewers. We at least need 75 likes. So it'd be much appreciated if you could just stick a like on the stream. Only takes a split second to do it. And really helps out the channel. So we've got KB in the chat. We've got Parliamentary Procedure, great name. Simon Jones, Internet Tough Guy. Internet Tough Guy says, I'm sorry, but Adam Boy just seems a bit overhyped for me. Clearly lacks power. Well, he was only the second guy to stop. Dalton Smith. Second guy to stop Sergey Lipinets. So if he lacks power, then how do you explain the fact that only Boots Ennis has managed to stop Lipinets before? And look, I was a bit skeptical of Adam Azim as well, and I'm not 100% sold on him still, but he's definitely starting to win me over. Got Gerald in the chat. He says, the Ghanaian guy came to fight and entertain tonight. I hope he gets signed by a top promotion because he's got potential to be a star. Jimbo Jones says, Adam Azim is not that impressive to me. The ghost of Lipinets, and we're supposed to be on this hype train. And I don't know if it's just me as well. He looks very open on the inside to me. A lot of people not impressed. Ade says, I thought he fought well. So did I. So did I. Ben says, love the content, Hatman. Azim looked impressive tonight. Low blows shouldn't distract from a very well-rounded performance. I agree with that comment. I thought he looked very good. Jay said he did that against Ahura Davis, Hatman. Once Davis was weakening, he fought him in the pocket. Shout out to Martin Wood Wilkinson. He says, good morning, Hatman. Greetings from HK. Not sure if that was meant to be UK, but HK. Shout out to Martin. Ibrahim says he's got a bit of George Grove style on him stance-wise. He does indeed. Ben says Azim has a decent chin, or had a decent chin check tonight. Lipinets tagged him as Azim got that first knockdown, and Azim seemed to take it easily. Indeed, he did. Jay says, Hatman, who do you think performed better? Boots when he beat Lipinets or Azim? Well, I would say Boots because he got Lipinets out of there earlier. He also dropped him twice rather than once. I believe Boots stopped him in, I think it was 6 rounds. And that was several years ago when Lipinets was fresher. So I'd have to say Boots. But again, that was at a higher weight. That was at 147. This was at 140. And Lipinets really had no business fighting at 147. Ricoba says, at the start, I thought Azim was just a hype fighter, but in his last 2 fights, I've seen some major improvements in his inside fighting and back foot fighting. Me too. He's starting to win me over. KB says, I think Azim has a suspect chin and his team are protecting him. That's what I used to suspect. And it still might be the case, but we haven't seen any evidence yet. So if his chin is suspect, it's not that suspect. Do you know what I mean? It's not like really bad. He's got some type of punch resistance there. Shout out to KS. Ayed says Richards facing Lopez apparently. Okay, we'll see if that happens. A unification. Also says Azim should face Harlem. That's an easy fight for Azim. Somebody says Harlem Eubank, stop it. Yeah, Harlem Eubank to me is not impressive at all. Okay, Anglo says Dalton Smith hits harder and is the best timing puncher in Britain. Azim gets chinned in 5 rounds. Well, hopefully we get to see the fight and find out. Smoking Joe says, I think the IBO rankings copy the BoxRec rankings. They used to do their own computerized rankings, but I'm sure they announced they were going to follow BoxRec. If they are just copying BoxRec rankings, that's terrible because BoxRec, it have a very, very flawed system with this computerized thing. Very, very flawed. So if that's what they're doing, then no wonder their rankings are terrible. Shout out to Ocean Blue. He says, what have I missed? I've just been giving my assessment, my review of the Adam Azim, Sergey Lipinets fight. I thought he put on a very good performance. Wave says Lipinets and Howard Davis had held absolutely no threat. With good matchmaking to make Azim look good. Okay, fair enough. Shout out to Casa. He says, like the ting, bro. Big up. If everyone can put a like on the stream, it'd be much appreciated. It really helps with visibility. Shout out to JDM. He says, Devin Haney shouldn't be champion in recess. He's moved to 147 now. Well, you know, the WBC, they do what they do. Let's just put it that way. S says, you watching Benavidez, Morel, who you got? I got Benavidez in that fight on points. Jay Jones says, read out our comments and we might read out our comments. Well, if you want a guaranteed readout of the comments, then give a super chat. There you go. That's how you know your comments will be guaranteed read out. It only takes a second to like a comment, to like the video. It costs you nothing. If you appreciate what I do here, that's the least you can do. Seriously. Or else I could just say, you know what? I'm not reading anything other than super chats. Forget about likes. I won't read anything other than super. I could do that. But instead, no, I actually read the comments that I can read. Obviously, I can't read all of them depending on how busy the chat room is. Jimbo says Turkey offered Adam Azim 3 fights. Pierce O'Leary, Dalton Smith, and Sean McComb for the Ben Eubank undercard, and they turned them all down and suggested weaker opponents apparently. Shout out to Flynn Glover. Big up, big up. Casa says rankings ultimately are mocking at this point. S.A says he reads comments. Indeed, big up S.A. Ayed says watching Royal Rumble. Is that on? Ayed says, what happened to Azim's brother? Yeah, we spoke about Azim's brother several live streams ago. And I don't know whether it's the Mandela effect or what, but both myself and several viewers seem to remember Azim's brother actually losing. But then you look at his BoxRec page and he's never lost. So make of that what you will, but I could have sworn I had a memory of Adam Azim's brother losing. But apparently he never has as a pro. So make of that what you will, because it weren't just me. There was loads of other people in the chat saying, yeah, I remember his brother losing. Weird. Okay, Royal Rumble on Netflix right now. We must have all dreamed it. It must have been like a collective dream. What a weird thing. Same Hussein in the chat. Big up, Same. He says he was injured last 15 months. He's not lost yet in the pros. Made his comeback tonight. Okay. Jimbo Jones says you may be mixing up with Carol Atama. No, I remember Carol Atama losing. Moses were very upset afterwards. But no, I remember Adam Azim's brother losing. It weren't just me. It was like loads of other people remember it as well. Apparently it didn't happen, but we've all got this false memory somehow. Shout out to Justin over there in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, USA. Much love, much respect. Shout out to Justin. Ocean Blue says Carroll lost on Moses' debut. It was certainly one of his very early fights. Yeah, when his brother Carroll got chinned. Smoking Joe says, just lifted this off Wiki for 2014. The organization now employs BoxRec, the independent boxing records keeper, and computerized rankings website to produce the IBO rankings. Okay, so it is true. Must be why their rankings are so terrible. Chaos says, are you going live for the Benavidez Morel fight? I don't know whether I'll be going live for it. but I am going to try to catch it. And as for WWE, you know, I'm a bit skeptical of WWE now in this particular era, especially since Vince McMahon no longer has any, last I checked anyway, he no longer has any shares in the WWE, does he? Correct me if I'm wrong. But I don't think Vince McMahon has anything to do with WWE now. Because of the scandal and the pressure they were putting on him, he eventually was bought out, right? And so without McMahon's input, yeah, I'm skeptical about how entertaining WWE can be. There seems to be more of an emphasis now on women's wrestling with the WWE. I'm like, is this going the way of professional boxing? Where they're going to try and fall? I mean, obviously it's sports entertainment, you know, it's not real. But yeah, the Attitude Era was the best in WWE, and it seems like there will never be a return, or at least not for now, to the type of content that they were putting out during the Attitude Era. Kylie says, I can't do wrestling as a grown man. Used to love it when I was a kid. If they brought Attitude Era type wrestling back, I'd still watch it. Real talk. If they could bring stuff like that back, yeah. I'd still be tuning in. But the Attitude Era was so near the knuckle. Even for then, even for the 90s, the Attitude Era was like really near the knuckle. In today's world, I mean, it would just get cancelled to oblivion. Do you know what I mean? They could never do the Attitude Era now because it'd be far too controversial and politically incorrect and all that kind of thing. They really pushed the envelope during the Attitude Era. It was like the inner workings of Vince McMahon's mind laid bare. You know what I mean? Where he took all the filters off and just, put all his darkest thoughts and what have you into reality. McMahon was literally one of the best heels that the WWE has ever had, if not the best. In fact, let's have a vote. Who thinks that Vince McMahon was the best heel ever? If not McMahon, then who would you vote for as the best WWE heel? I'd have to think hard, but I reckon it's McMahon, you know. He was just such an incredible heel. Mindsmith says, I hated Kurt Angle. You're saying up there for me. Yeah, McMahon was the guy. he was the guy. Some people saying Randy Orton. I quite liked Iron Sheik. He's real old school. I quite liked him as a heel. Booker T was hilarious. In WCW, and then of course WWE bought WCW, didn't they? And then they had all the WCW guys in the WWE. But yeah, I've got to go with McMahon being the greatest heel of all time. Yeah, he's got all sorts of accusations on him at the moment. So not looking good for him. But if I'm just judging him on his work, you know, he's done some incredible entertainment. Jay Jones says he used to fancy McMahon's daughter, Stephanie McMahon. Somebody says she was Peng. Saeem says Rashiki was wild. Yeah, the one that would sit on people's faces and that was horrible. Ayed says, did you watch the Boston fight? Remind me of it. Jay Jones says Triple H is banging that. Yeah, they're married in real life, right? Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Okay, no, I didn't see him air yet. No, I didn't see. I didn't watch the Matchroom card yesterday. Yeah, before the Attitude Era, you had Hulk Hogan, obviously, Ric Flair, Ultimate Warrior. You had Sergeant Slaughter. Who else was there now? There were so many guys in the 80s. I've already mentioned the Iron Sheik. He was like a heel for Hulk Hogan. Jake the Snake Roberts, yep, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase and Virgil. Ravishing Rick Rude, of course. Superfly Jimmy Snuka. These were all like pre-Attitude Era wrestlers. Some of them crossed over into the Attitude Era, but you know, they were around from before the Attitude Era. Psycho Sid, yep. Also known as Sid Justice. Shout out to Muhammad in the live chat. Shawn Michaels. Yeah, Shawn Michaels was like, he really made his name in the Attitude Era. He was the face of the Attitude Era for a minute. Shawn Michaels. Yeah, Bret Hart, he came up before the Attitude Era. Black Dynamite says, was Nation of Domination part of the Attitude Era? Yeah, they kind of were. I like Shawn Michaels as well. Shawn Michaels is good. Part of D-Generation X. D-Generation X, of course, was a big part of the Attitude Era. Shawn Michaels, China, and Triple H. A lot of people watching the Royal Rumble. Okay. Legion of Doom, yep. Bushwhackers. The Natural Disasters, Tugboat and Earthquake. Marty Jannetty, yep. Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. Matthew Duke says, isn't Shawn Michaels horrible in real life? I have no idea. Stone Cold. Well, Stone Cold was around for a long time. I think originally he was called Stunning Steve or something. I'm not sure if that was, I don't think that was in the WWE. It might have been actually when he first joined the WWE or WWF as it was then. But yeah, Stone Cold really came up in the Attitude Era. He wasn't widely known, you know, to the broader public until the Attitude Era. That's where he really made his name. Coco Beware, I remember him. Gold Dust, Mankind. Yeah, Chris Benoit was kind of after. And we all know what happened to Chris Benoit. That was messed up. Kylie says wrestling is brutal on the body. It is too. You had The Undertaker, of course, and Paul Bearer. Big Boss Man, yep. Another one. I mentioned Sergeant Slaughter, right? And Jake the Snake Roberts. The British Bulldog. Yeah, Paul Bearer was jokes. And then you had kind of towards the end of the Attitude Era when you had Ken Shamrock come in. Obviously, Ken Shamrock was a real MMA guy, fought in UFC, right? But he was a big part of WWE for a while. They called him the most dangerous man in the world, Ken Shamrock. S.A. says Sting jacked his whole style from the Crow. Rowdy Roddy Piper. Rowdy Roddy Piper was great. And he was especially good in the John Carpenter film, They Live. That's a classic right there. You can watch that on YouTube, I think. Rick the Model Martel, yeah. I mentioned Brutus the Barber Beefcake. LOD Legion of Doom. Yes, indeed, S.A. Eddie Guerrero. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Someone says Axsaw. No, it's Hacksaw. As in Hacksaw. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Yeah, Ric Flair was one of my favorites because his promos were insane. And you wonder how he was able to get so hyped for those promos. Because energy drinks weren't really a thing back then, other than maybe Gatorade. So was he sticking something up his nose? I don't know. But Ric Flair was so hype. You think he was going to have an aneurysm. Do you know what I mean? During his promos, he was like... his whole head went like beetroot red. He was like proper off it. Ric Flair promos were crazy. Yeah, someone says on that Tony Montana, allegedly. Wheeling, dealing, kiss stealing, limousine riding. That's the one. Son of a gun. Someone says definitely. So was Shawn Michaels. A lot of wrestlers were on that. Yeah. Booger sugar. Nose candy back then. Black Dynamite says only America could produce something like WWE. The UK is too depressing to create entertainment like that. Well, yeah, it's bombastic beyond bombastic, isn't it? The WWE. British wrestling back in the days was so dour and dull in comparison with like Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks. It was never a scratch on Jeff Capes, another one. Remember they used to have this like thing where they would say that Jeff Capes was so strong he could tear up a Yellow Pages in half or a phone book in half with his bare hands. Somebody asking what part of London I'm from. South London. But yeah, wrestling is a very American thing, you know. Nobody really does bombast better than they do. When it comes to just being totally over the top and bombastic, the Americans have got that, or at least they used to back in the days. Because, you know, American entertainment has changed a lot these days. But back in the 90s and the 80s and what have you, crazy. Ocean Blue says, by the way, bro, heard Moses for the first time today. Great track. Big up Ocean Blue. Yeah, if you haven't checked out the music, my old music from back in the days, a decade or more ago, some of it 20 years old, it's on a Rumble channel called The Bottomless Drink. And I heard it's quite good. Connor says it's more cringy now and not as entertaining. Yeah, because now they're having to watch their P's and Q's and, you know, toe the line a little bit. That they can't go as far with being politically incorrect, because that was part of the comedy. That was part of what made it fun, was that they were trying to trigger you with politically incorrect stuff. And Circle says social media also took something away from it. I think that's a good comment. That's a good comment. Ocean Blue says, in a world full of serpents, what chance is an honest man? Yeah. Just to be a bit self-indulgent, that's one of my favorite lines. That's one of my favorite lines from my own song. In a world full of serpents, what chance is an honest man? And when you really think about it, it's kind of depressing, isn't it? In a world full of serpents, what chance has an honest man? Kylie says, I think social media has taken things away, or taken away things from many aspects of entertainment in general. Yeah. Triple R says, the pathways are punishing. They are indeed. As my feet tread this rocky road, the pathways are punishing. In a world full of serpents, what chance is an honest man? Encircled says, even as a tech addict born in the late 90s, I'd still love to get rid of social media. Yeah, I'm so glad that I grew up and I was an adult in an era before social media. So I'm from the last generation that experienced adulthood before social media. My generation was the last. So we're talking about late Gen X, which is me, and early millennials. If you kind of, group them together as the same generation, they were the last to have experienced a world with no social media as adults. Yeah, I remember the world before the internet too, but internet obviously came in the 90s, but very few households had the internet until well into the 2000s. It was a minority of households that had it in the 90s, a small minority. And it was seen as kind of like a nerdy thing still in the 90s. When people would talk, oh, you're on that internet, are you? Oh, okay, that's what geeks go on the internet and that, right? And it really started, the popularity of it started growing in the early 2000s due to, I mentioned this in a previous stream, but PORN really helped the popularity of the internet, was PORN. A lot of men started going on the internet more because of that. And Circle says multiplayer games. Yeah, but that was a slightly different thing because, you know, going online playing Halo on an Xbox is very different to, you know, going on a search engine and whatever. But in terms of like using the internet properly, not playing games, obviously there was PC games and what have you, but yeah, I guess that would have contributed too. But that was still like a very nerdy thing. Very nerdy thing. I'm talking about like more people that are not nerds and not really hardcore into computers. They started accessing the internet in larger and larger numbers because of PORN. I remember it. Yeah, internet phones made it more popular for sure. Although back then, you know, it would take so long to load a web page on a phone. It was crazy. And social media, by the time social media started to really take hold and become a thing, I would have been, I want to say pushing 30 by the time social media really came in and became a thing. I would have been pushing 30 at the time. I would have been pushing 30. Big up Fight Sport Talk. So yeah, I experienced pretty much most, if not all of my 20s without Instagram. I mean, there were dating websites, but you know, they weren't like dating apps today. And Instagram wasn't like it is today. It wasn't as ubiquitous as it is today. During my 20s, there was like MySpace. Yeah. And MySpace was actually cool. MySpace it didn't have the negative effect that Instagram and other so-called social media would go on to have. So MySpace was there. There was one called FacePic. And there were a few others flying around, you know, and they were kind of like, you know, I'm struggling to find the words to describe them, but they didn't really seem to have a destructive effect. But once, particularly Instagram took hold, that's been the most destructive one in terms of social media. That's been the one that's really messed people up. Yeah, you could count YouTube as social media, although people don't really interact. No, I guess they do, but well, people don't post their daily lives as often on YouTube as they do on, let's say, Instagram. And of course, Instagram is more popular with women, right? YouTube, yeah, loads of women watch YouTube as well. But young females generally tend to prefer Instagram rather than YouTube in terms of posting their own content. Friends reunited. Yeah, I remember that. That was before Facebook, wasn't it? And it's so funny, right? I remember in the early days of Facebook, yeah, when you used to sign in on Facebook, it would say, never use your real details on the internet. I kid you not. It used to warn you against using your real details on the internet because people could then, you know, steal that data and do whatever with it. But as I understand it now, I haven't been on Facebook for many years, but as I understand it now, you have to use your real details to be able to access Facebook. So it's just ironic the way it's completely the opposite of how it was in the early days where they would say, don't put your real details up. And now they say you have to put your real details up to be able to log in. I agree with Leo. Social media breeds narcissism. It does indeed. Not only does it breed narcissism, it also breeds insecurity. because of the narcissism of people on there, it makes many other people feel insecure and therefore jealous. So it's a toxic thing, really. Shout out to Matt for the super chat. He says, let me ask you a question about tonight's fight. Benavidez-Morel. Would Morel winning this fight be bad for boxing? I just don't think he'll get the undisputed fight like Benavidez won if he wins. All right, shout out to Matt. Would it be a bad thing? Well, I guess you're talking about the fact that Benavidez has got a much bigger following, and therefore a guy with a big following winning is better than a guy with a small following winning. Maybe so. You know, maybe you're right. Maybe it would be better for boxing if Benavidez won rather than Morel. But at the end of the day, I just want to see a fair fight and let the chips fall where they may. Because neither of these guys, up to this point in their careers, has been bad for boxing, right? It's not like you've got either of these guys ducking and dodging fights left, right, and center and messing around. Other than a period where Benavidez appeared as though he didn't want to fight Morel, then they've both been on smoke. So, you know, maybe it'll be better if, for boxing, if Benavidez wins because he's a bigger name. But just from a purely objective perspective, I just say, may the best man win. And let the chips fall where they may. At the end of the day, David Morel, Cuban, but he's atypical for a Cuban, isn't he? Most Cubans are kind of negative and antiseptic and they don't really entertain, whereas David Morel comes to knock people out. So I really appreciate that about him as a Cuban. It's not typical with Cuban fighters to be that aggressive and, offensive-minded. Fight Sport Talk says, I'm in my 30s and I wish social media didn't exist. And me too, to be honest. Especially things like Instagram and those kind of things. The world would be a better place without them. Without those apps being so central to people's lives, I think it'd be a better world. Shout out again to Matt for the super chat. He says, also, Dalton Smith looked like a freaking beast lately. I'd love to see him against Jack Catterall. Man, that would be a banger. Yeah, a lot of people have been calling for that fight. And I think I don't know how realistic it is, actually. I think that Catterall's probably going to go on to challenge some of the big names right now at the very top of the division. Whereas I think a more realistic fight for Dalton Smith would be Liam Parrow, who just lost his world title to Richardson Hitchens. So I think that's a more realistic fight for Dalton Smith. And if he can get past Liam Parrow and let's say do a better job than Hitchens did, then that really puts him in the mix. Shout out to Matt again for the super chat. He says, the only criticism I have with Dalton Smith is that his feet are a bit flat, kind of like Parrow, but his combinations are crisp and beautiful. Yeah, and, people were criticizing the opponent that he just fought for the European title, but he was European champion. Like, what are you supposed to do? If you want a guy to go the traditional route, that's what Dalton Smith has attempted. And the European title is a step along the way. Of course, he wanted to fight Adam Azim, but Azim and his team decided to go in a different direction. That's not Dalton Smith's fault. You can only beat who's in front of you. And he dusted that guy off in very good fashion, Dalton Smith. But when I think about Smith against Azim, Azim seems like the rangier guy, longer arms, faster. So, and Smith usually likes to fight on the back foot. And I'm not sure how well Smith fighting on the back foot would really match up with Azim. To me, that would give Azim the advantage. I think if you're going to beat Azim, he's a guy that you really need to put some type of pressure on. Obviously, Lipinets tried it, but he's too basic and he's too old. But somebody bigger and stronger and fresher applying pressure, not necessarily putting your arms up and just walking forward and blocking shots, but applying pressure with your feet, forcing Azim to make mistakes. If you're on the back foot, which is what Dalton Smith likes to do a lot, he likes to move around and be on the back foot, you're giving Azim lots of time and space to use that height and reach and the long arms and the fast hands. So, I don't know. It's interesting, as I say, that Azim's team still don't want to take the fight. But yeah, Dalton Smith is a good punch picker, there's no doubt. And there's power there, obviously. Triple R says, I just missed the boat. I'm in my mid-20s. I can remember 2010 when I was 12, when girls would approach you in the street. Wasn't the same 2013 onwards. Last college year in 2019, Snapchat was part of class. Justin says, Big Van Vader. That's an old school name. Andy Hall says, I agree with Telstar. As boring as a lot of people might find Cattrall, I don't see anyone having an easy night against him. Yeah, Cattrall is the quintessential awkward, tricky southpaw. He's very difficult to catch clean. He throws good combinations. He's a good counter puncher. Whenever he has been caught, he takes the shots well. He's got good stamina, great boxing brain. Very, very tricky guy to fight. Andy P says, why have so many passed away? Is it the roids? Probably. The roids combined with maybe other stuff they were doing. And as I understand it, the roids back then were different to the roids today. Maybe they were less safe. I don't know. Black Dynamite says, Hatman, did you ever own a BlackBerry? No, I never did. Never owned a BlackBerry. Blackberries came around at a time when I stopped caring about having the latest gadgets. There was a little period there in my early 20s where I always wanted the latest phone. But by the time I was maybe like 25, 26, I was like, I don't care about the latest phones anymore. Pain pills, indeed. Somebody says pain pills were rampant in wrestling. Yeah. It can't be good to be taking those constantly either. Connor says, yeah, I've mentioned it a few times, but yeah, I'm picking Benavidez against Morrell. Benavidez on points. Black Dynamite says, you must have owned a pager then. Yes, I did. Did I ever have a 6230? Yup, I had many Nokias. I can't even remember the model numbers of many of them, but 6230, I owned loads of different ones. Loads of different Nokias. Nokia were the Samsung of their day and the iPhone of their day, right? Shout out to President Brush for the super chat. He says it's unfortunate. But if something unfortunate happened in the Ben Eubank fight, is that the end of Hearn Matchroom? I have a funny feeling about this bout similar to Eubank Sr. Well, first of all, I certainly hope not. Because tragedies are always damaging to boxing, but when they happen in high-profile bouts, they're even more damaging still. So I certainly hope nothing like that will happen. I hope both guys finish the fight safe and sound. Would it be the end of Matchroom? It would certainly hurt his reputation. But I don't know where, for it to be the end of Matchroom, DAZN would need to distance themselves from Matchroom. Do you know what I mean? Maybe not renew their contract or whatever. And I don't know whether they would do that. I don't know whether they'd do that. The corporate world is so cynical. I don't know whether they'd do that. But who knows? Who knows? But shout out to President Brush for the super chat. And let's hope, again, that nothing like that happens in the fight. Because that would be horrible. Mohammed says, BlackBerry, I swear, was marketed as like a professional work phone, but teenagers just used it to mess around and date. Yeah, when it came out, it was like a business, marketed as like a businessman's phone. But they had Ping Messenger on it, right? And was it called Ping? I'm sure it was called Ping, wasn't it? Or somebody says it's called BlackBerry Messenger. Why do I think it was called Ping Messenger? But you could message people for free. Okay, it was called BBM. See, I never owned a BlackBerry, but yeah, you could message people for free as I understand it. Okay, you could ping people. That's why. Okay. Yeah, so you could message people for free. And at the time, you know, there were very few mobile phone plans, either on pay-as-you-go or contract, where you could text for free. Very few of them, or had unlimited text. Very few of them had that at the time. That's why the BlackBerry took off the way that it did. Because you could use this messenger and, you know, have these endless conversations. Because there was a time when text messaging was very expensive. Black Dynamite says the Motorola Flip was the phone back in the day. Yeah, I remember Sony Ericsson was the go-to for a while. Then the Motorola's came in, and then the Nokias took over. Sony Ericsson tried to make a little bit of a comeback later on with a music phone, which I owned. There was me and several of my friends that had the Sony Ericsson music phone. Don't know if anyone remembers it. It had like an orange screen and some basic like music software on it. Sony Ericsson music phone, Walkman phones. Yeah. The orange highlight to it. Yeah, there was a black version and a white version. They had some extremely primitive like beat making software on it. You could make like really primitive beats. Mohammed says, yeah, I think so. Did it slide up and down? No, this didn't slide up and down. This was just like, it was a little phone, maybe a bit bigger than a credit card, but it wasn't a slide phone. It came out maybe, I don't know, 2006, 2007, somewhere around there. But yeah, it was like a Walkman phone. I forget exactly how they described it, but that was a real solid phone. A lot of people had it. Mohammed says I would have been like 7 or 8. Yeah, I was well into my 20s, like late 20s when that phone came out. A lot of youngsters in the chat. Big up the young G's. Afro Jam says a Nokia had one with the controls on the edge of the screen, and that one lit up when you play music through the headphones. I remember I had a Nokia. The last Nokia I think I owned was the N95 or the N96. Anyone remember the N95 or N96? For the time, it was like cutting edge. It had the best camera and video on it. Like way better video quality than any other phone at the time. And it had a bunch of other features. N95 and N96. I think I lost my N95 on the phone. On the train. Just randomly left it on the train. I was absolutely gutted when I left that phone on the train. That's right, Afro Jam. It had an 8 megapixel camera. That's right. I think the N96 had the 8 megapixel camera and the N95 had a 5 megapixel. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it was. But that was groundbreaking for the time. And you could also plug, the N95 was one of the first phones I can remember where you could actually plug it into the TV. So you could like use, cables to plug it into the TV and then watch your video footage and your pictures and stuff like that on the TV. Yeah, I remember infrared. Yeah, infrared. Phones don't have infrared anymore, do they? Shout out to President Brush for the super chat. He says, do you have any tips on maintaining punching, speed, and bulking whilst bulking in the gym? Also, quick tips on recovery from a heavy workout. I couldn't really tell you about stuff like bulking because I've never been a weights man. I've always been naturally big, so I've never needed to do weights and get into that whole world of bulking and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not really the guy to ask about all that when it comes to bulking. My body type is, I'm the kind of person that puts muscle on very easily. I'm already a muscular person, but I put muscle on very easily and put fat on very easily. So my whole thing is losing weight, not gaining it. But tips on recovery from a heavy workout. Is as simple and boring as rest and making sure you're getting the right nutrition. Because some people will put their bodies through hell in training, and because they're trying to lose weight, they'll malnourish themselves. And that's just going to delay your recovery. So you're actually going to end up losing weight more slowly because you're not recovering as quick and you can't work out as effectively. So make sure you're getting that nutrition in. And sleep, of course, Kylie, right there. Sleep, indeed. Absolutely crucial is getting your sleep in. But yeah, shout out to President Brush every time. Somebody says, I've heard that phone robbery has gone up recently. Yeah, I mean, who knows? These things go up and down all the time, but I can't imagine that phone robbery is as common today as it was in the early 2000s, because back then, it was more difficult to block phones. Because I remember back then, if you managed to get someone's phone, then it couldn't be blocked, basically. So that made, phone robberies back then very, very common. And also back then, people used to have they used to call them chipped SIM cards. So these were SIM cards which were hacked somehow, where you could use the SIM card and it would charge the person who owned it So there was all kind of like scams in the early days of mobile phones, which I don't think are a thing anymore. But yeah, chipped SIM cards where you could make unlimited calls and texts, and some poor individual will be getting billed. Free text and calls. But those chip SIMs would eventually get blocked. They'd eventually block the SIM, but it wouldn't block the phone. So you could just put a different SIM in it and go again. Yeah, I remember in the early 2000s, several incidents where people got shot for their phones. Do you know what I mean? Like for just basic phones. Not like today where a phone is damn near a computer, an iPhone or whatever. These are like basic phones. People getting shot for them. Jackie Boy Johnson says shoplifting gone up. Yeah, as people's purse strings tighten, then people are going to steal more for sure. When an economy starts going down, then crime usually will go up. That's good advice there from President Brush regarding water intake. Yes, Charles B. Big up Charles B in the chat. Black Dynamite says, now they're just driving around on electric bikes snatching phones. The government, could you even blame it? Yeah, I'm going to blame the government because they're not doing anything to stop Sadiq Khan. But the decision to stop e-scooters on pavements and on cycle paths is absolutely insane, because it's far more dangerous to have e-scooters in the road. And I'm talking about to the people on the e-scooters and just general traffic and causing accidents. It's far more dangerous to have e-scooters in the middle of the road than have them on the pavement. Yes, they're an inconvenience. And, there's a lot of idiots on e-scooters. But seriously, putting e-scooters driving in the middle of the road, that is madness. In somewhere like London anyway. Maybe if you live in a less busy town or city, it's okay. But in busy London, having e-scooters flying, it's just, dear oh dear. How disastrous is that? But Sadiq Khan and the government are hell-bent on making driving in London the most unpleasant experience imaginable. It's clearly part of an agenda to try and get rid of as many cars off the roads as they can by 2030 or whatever. So they do it by making the driving experience, particularly in cities, thoroughly unpleasant. 20-mile-an-hour zones everywhere. So you get to your destination very slowly and it's less fuel efficient and all that kind of stuff. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Shout out to Martin Wood Wilkinson. He says, time for work o'clock. Thanks for the live hat, man. Have a great day, everyone. Big up, Martin Wood Wilkinson. President Brush says, you have no time for Sadiq since lockdown days. Indeed. I can't actually believe that anyone has voted him in. Call me paranoid, but I just feel like there's something contrived about him being there. I think last time they really split the vote, and I think that was part of the plot to get him back in, was splitting the vote. But him keeping on winning, Who votes for that guy? Do you know what I mean? Who's actually voting for Sadiq Khan? I don't know who's voting for him. I've never met anyone who likes him. Very weird. You know, there was a comment from somebody. I can't remember if I read it somewhere or if it was somebody in a live stream I did. But it was actually an Asian person who made this comment, right? A couple of years ago. And they said that Sadiq Khan will soon be exposed. Yeah. And presumably they meant exposed to the Asian and the Muslim community. And they were inferring that Sadiq Khan is actually a closet rainbow gang guy. It wouldn't surprise me, to be honest. Yeah. This Asian guy was trying to say that he had some kind of inside knowledge and that Sadiq Khan was in the closet and he was rainbow gang. And that when the truth comes out, Asian people are going to stop voting for him. Oh. Make of that what you will. Somebody says, Sadiq Khan and Kelbrook takeover. Mindsmith says he don't have that camp tone. Well, not all of them have the camp tone, you know? Michael Barrymore wasn't really camp, was he? I mean, he didn't have a camp tone. I mean, P. Diddy doesn't really have a camp tone as such. Yeah, Philip Schofield, he's another one. Philip Schofield doesn't really have a camp tone as such. In fact, that's a very good comparison, Black Dynamite, because Philip Schofield has a similar demeanor to Sadiq Khan. They're actually quite similar. Yeah, Schofield and Sadiq Khan are quite similar. They've got a similar vibe about them. Big up Malik. Charles B says that rugby player too, forgot his name. I'm not even sure who that would be. I'm not that familiar with rugby players since the 90s, really. Don't really know any rugby players now. In the 90s, when I used to watch a little bit of rugby, that's when rugby union was still big. When there was like Jonah Lomu, Will Carling, who is famous for having an affair with Princess Diana. For the old school heads out there, remember that one? Will Carling. Yeah, don't know what happened to rugby union. It's no longer popular, is it? It's just completely died. President Brush says, isn't Lomu dead? That's where he randomly died, didn't he, Jonah Lomu? He was a great player for a couple years. Like when he first burst on the scene, I think he was only about 18, playing for the All Blacks. You know, when they demolished England and Lomu ran through the whole England team like a train? That's when he was like really good. But then he developed some kind of health issues, which seemed to persist for the rest of his career. Then I swear Jonah Lomu died. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I swear Jonah Lomu's no longer alive. Shout out to Grizz for the super chat. Big up, big up. Yeah, died at 40. Wow. Wow. It was weird because he was like a genetic freak. He was like a phenom when he first burst on the scene. And then he developed these health issues and died so young. God only knows what that was all about, but it's like the saying, the flame that burns brightest burns shortest. I'm messing up the saying, but you get the effect it's supposed to have, right? Bright flames don't burn for that long. Well, there was a lot of interest when Jonah Lomu was in his prime, which would have been in his late teens, early 20s. There was a lot of interest from the NFL. I'm not sure whether he actually tried out with the NFL. He might have done, but obviously it's a very different game. But there was a lot of interest from the NFL in Lomu because when he played England in that Rugby World Cup, I think he was like 18 or 19 years old. And he was 6'5", 250 or 260 pounds. Very, very fast for a man of that size. Charles B says he could run 100 meters in 10.7 seconds. Yeah, and for somebody that big, that's impressive. Do you know what I mean? Because he was a very, very large man. I remember a few rugby players from that time. There was, I think he was a rugby union guy though, called Twigamala. You guys remember Twigamala? No, he was a league guy, not union. Rugby league, Twigamala. He was another Samoan guy. I think he was a relative of Jonah Lomu actually, Twigamala. And a lot of those Pacific Island guys, they really like to fight as well. You know, they like to drink and they like to fight. Black Dynamite said, how did he die though? Jonah Lomu, I'm not even sure. But he had health problems for years. Oh, wow. Twigamala died. Twigamala's gone too. Damn. Pound for pound boxing in the chat. He says, Martin Ofaya from Rugby League played for Wigan. Yeah, I remember him. He was quite good, Martin Ofaya. He was always in like the highlights, the weekly highlights on the sports programs in the UK. There you go. Yeah, somebody says Lomu always had kidney problems. But he died from 40 of a heart attack. Damn. Let me look up Jonah Lomu. Because I remember when he died, I was like, man, that guy's way too young to be dead. Yeah, died 2015. That's crazy. It says here at the end of 1995, you see? That's why his prime was so short. He was literally in his late teens, his prime. At the end of 95, he was diagnosed with nephrotic syndrome, a serious kidney disorder. His rugby union career went on hold whilst the disorder was treated. In 2003, the NZRFU, that's the New Zealand Rugby, announced that Lomu had been put on dialysis 3 times a week due to the deterioration in his kidney function. Side effects of Lomu's dialysis treatment led to severe nerve damage in his feet and legs. See, this is why he was pretty much done. By the time he was in his mid-20s, he was done. He was no longer the same force. God knows what that was all about. Could it be PEDs? I don't want to put that on him. R.I.P. But you wonder how someone so young and, healthy and physically fit could have such terrible health problem. Well, I say healthy, but, should be healthy. An athlete like that could have such terrible health issues. Yeah, somebody says their kidney problems usually a sign of PED usage. Again, I don't want to put that on speak ill of the dead here, but very strange to be, going the way that he did. Yeah, Kylie, he was a fully grown man at such a young age. Like when he was 18, he was just a monster. You know what I mean? He was an absolute beast at 18. Crazy. It actually does, Dominic. That's right. It says the name of Talma sounds like a Pacific Islander. I know he's Nigerian. It does, It would actually fit. And he kind of looks a bit like a Pacific Islander, to be fair. But Italma does sound like he could be Tongan or Samoan or something. Italma. Yeah, that's right. One second, peeps. Okay. Somebody says, isn't Italma from Slovakia or something? That's where he was born. Yeah, he's half Nigerian, half Slovakian. And I would imagine he's Yoruba, like his dad is a Yoruba Nigerian. Now, Andy Hall says, I didn't quite live through Nigel Benn's whole career. How good really was Doug DeWitt, who Ben often quotes victory over to prove his value? Well, you know, it's the context of the time. So when Nigel Benn fought Doug DeWitt, it was for the WBO title, which was lightly regarded at the time. But DeWitt was coming off a victory over a guy called Matthew Hilton, which again at the time he was a Canadian guy. Was he unbeaten? I can't remember if he was unbeaten. If he wasn't unbeaten, he had very few losses. So that was seen as kind of a, you know, good result for Doug DeWitt. This was late 80s, very early 90s. And you know, Doug DeWitt had been around and he'd been in with people like Sambu Kalambe. God, who else had he fought? He mainly lost to a bunch of people, you know, so he was like a tough guy, Doug DeWitt, but he wasn't like an elite fighter or anything. But he was respected because he was tough and he was, you know, a rugged fighter from the United States, Doug DeWitt. But he, you know, he was never elite or anything. But yeah, Nigel Benn obviously bashed him up. It was really the fight with Iran Barkley that got Nigel Benn more recognition in the United States. Later on, of course, there would be the Gerald McClellan fight, which really got him more recognition. But the Iran Barkley fight did a lot more for Nigel Benn's reputation stateside than the Doug DeWitt fight, because Iran Barkley, around that time, he'd gone the distance with a prime James Toney. And Nigel Benn's gone in there and done him in a round. Do you know what I mean? So that was a lot more impressive. And, you know, Iran Barkley had a good career overall. Obviously, he carried on for far too long. But overall, he had a good career. Hassan says, wasn't Ben hurt badly in that fight? Yeah. Ben was hurt in a lot of fights. Ben was hurt in a lot of fights. You know, he didn't have the greatest of chins, but he had a massive heart. He could punch. And he was mentally extremely tough. But yeah, the Iran Barkley performance got him respect, you know, to some extent, although there were some people that complained about rabbit punches from Nigel Benn in that fight and said, you know, he shouldn't have got awarded the victory, a first round TKO victory, because some of the shots were, you know, behind the head. But it definitely made people sit up and take attention in the United States, because back then especially, Americans were just totally dismissive of British fighters. And so, yeah, when he did that, you know, knocked out Barkley in a round, some were saying, well, you know, maybe Barkley's finished. But as I say, he went on a few fights later to, in fact, did he go the distance with James Toney? No, I think James Toney actually stopped him late. I think he stopped him late, but the fight went a lot of rounds. It might have gone like 10 or 11 rounds or something like that with James Toney. It went late in the fight. I remember that. And I don't think Toney knocked him down in the fight. From what I can remember, I don't think Toney knocked him down. But it was a very good performance by Toney, you know, because Barkley was all over him and throwing his famed left hook and what have you. And James Toney put on a slipping and countering masterclass, opening up on the inside with his combinations. And he really beat Iran Barkley up in that fight. Again, this is like early 90s. And Iran Barkley finished his career, I think, at heavyweight. And he's terribly punch drunk, by the way. If you ever see Iran Barkley, if Iran Barkley is even alive still, terribly, terribly punch drunk. Jake says, Hatman, who do you think would win, Prime AJ or Briggs? That's a very good question. That's a very good question. It's kind of a difficult one because both guys had stamina issues. Briggs had real bad stamina issues. I know he outboxed George Foreman, but Foreman was old as hell. And, Briggs always had stamina problems, but he was a very fast starter. Very fast starter. So AJ would need to get through the early rounds against Briggs, and that's no mean feat. But if he did manage to get through the early rounds, it's a 50-50, to be honest. It's a 50-50. If AJ got through the first, let's say, 4 rounds against the prime Briggs, it's a 50-50 fight. And as somebody says there, Briggs got a gift. Yeah, a lot of people felt like Briggs was very fortunate to get the decision over George Foreman. Hassan says Briggs took Vitali's power. Well, Vitali wasn't really a big one-punch man. Vitali wasn't really a great puncher. He had a high knockout ratio because he used to wear people down. But I would say, punch for punch, AJ hits harder than Vitali Klitschko. And that was an older version of Briggs, who actually, I want to say, an older and juiced up to the eyeballs version of Briggs, who could take a better shot. I mean, Briggs never had a bad chin. But again, he used to gas out so badly. Like his first defeat was to a guy called Darryl Wilson. Yeah, Darryl Wilson stopped him. I think it was in 4 rounds. He stopped Shannon Briggs. That was the prime Briggs. Briggs came out, tried to knock Darryl Wilson's head off, gassed out, and got stopped himself in about 4 rounds. And most of you, unless you were watching boxing at the time, you'll never have heard of Darryl Wilson because he wasn't a very good fighter. He was small too, Darryl Wilson. God, he must have been 210 pounds. After that fight, Darryl Wilson fought David Tura and got done in a round himself. I think that was after Tua knocked out John Ruiz. It was either the fight before or the fight after Tua knocked out John Ruiz. I think it was the fight before. And then he went in there with Darryl Wilson, who just chinned Shannon Briggs in 4 rounds, whatever it was. And Tua done him in a round. There's somebody else saying Briggs' chin was solid versus Vitali. Yeah, but again, Vitali wasn't really a massive puncher. He was a decent puncher, but he wasn't a real concussive puncher. He used to wear you down with accumulation. And on top of that, Briggs, at that stage of his career, was so juiced up. He was able to take a better shot then. And he was more durable, funny enough, later on in his career than he was when he was younger. Because as I say, he got stopped by Darryl Wilson in 4 rounds. He got stopped by Lennox Lewis. I think in, 5 or 6 rounds, Lewis stopped him. Again, he gave it a good go. He was aggressive against Lewis in the first couple of rounds, but he gassed out so badly that Lewis was able to drop him a bunch of times and stop him by the midway point. So yeah, Briggs was known for gassing. And he says that the reason he used to fight that way is because of his asthma problem. So he was always like anxious and wanted to get fights over real quick, because if they went any rounds, the claim was his asthma would kick in and he'd be done for. But there have been many fighters who claim to have had asthma problems, and sometimes it's like a convenient excuse, Like Razor Ruddock also claimed to have asthma issues. He blamed his first defeat, I think it was his first defeat, to a journeyman called David Jaco. Yeah, there was a guy called David Jaco who Mike Tyson knocked out in a round years earlier. He was like a tall, skinny white guy called David Jaco, journeyman. He stopped Razor Ruddock. This was long before Razor Ruddock fought Mike Tyson. He was stopped by a guy called David Jaco. And Ruddock blamed it on asthma at the time. And some people say that asthma is common with athletes. One thing I know about asthma inhalers is that some of them contain steroids, don't they? So could asthma inhalers also be used to like mask PED use? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there as a question. Because some asthma inhalers contain steroids. Pound for Pound says, wasn't it an inhaler that got Billy Joe Saunders caught? It was, but I don't think it was an asthma inhaler. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it was an asthma inhaler. Nasal spray. Yeah, that's what it was. All right, peeps, I'm going to wrap this one up here. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining me once again for this live stream. Impromptu, late one. And a special shout out to everybody who donated via Super Chat. We'll see about the Benavidez Burrell. Whether I'll do another stream for that. It's possible, but no promises. It's going to be in a couple of hours' time if it is. So, yeah. Shout out to everyone. Catch you on the next one. Be good. I'm out.